I was just going to say a word or two about Beirut, because it's been such a catastrophic event, that explosion that occurred just over a week ago. And Joe came up with the idea that we should maybe do a shelter box in order to raise funds for the Beirut people, the Lebanese people. But of course, the problem is having that lovely tent up in front of the snug could provide logistic problems with COVID-19. So I'm not sure if anyone has any other ideas about what we could do to help out with Lebanon, but we're always open to ideas. Just doing a straight GoFundMe.
What if we just put out the boxes?
You mean a Lebanon box?
For donation, yeah, for donations.
We could do that.
You could set up the tent across the street in the park.
Or just
across the street in the park, yeah. But then, how do you have to limit the number of people you allow in at a time?
I don't think that's a problem.
No. Well, we. Yeah, carry on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
I think across the street in the park, on the green, and if we had a lineup of people, they could either look in, or we could allow one or two in at a time, or bubbles in at a time.
Okay.
I think the visual effect is really important for people.
Yeah.
Actually seeing what a shelter box is.
Right. Well, I could contact them in West Vancouver and say, do you have one available? And we see what we could do. Because they certainly do create a vision that inspires people to donate money to these causes.
You need to find out if Shelter Box is going to be part of
thank you for that.
the recovery.
I will work on that.
Hillary, you need to find out if Shelter Box is going to be present.
Oh, yeah.
Whether Shelter Box are actually supporting it.
Hillary is frozen.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, she is. She's gone to black and white too.
Has anybody read the Wade Davis article, The Unraveling of America?
That was interesting.
Pretty good article.
Where was that?
Very good.
The Rolling Stones magazine picked it up, but then since then it's gone kind of everywhere. And
Okay.
I heard about it because he was interviewed by CBC Radio.
All right.
And so it's an article I would say definitely worth reading.
Very worth reading, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I see that Margaret is also frozen. I'm wondering if they're all using the same internet connection.
No. Margaret's got her
Margaret's back.
muted.
I'm here. Hopefully they'll come back. I think they sometimes seem to have issues with their internet.
Hello, Margaret.
Hi.
Maybe this is a good chance for Sheila to talk, and I could put up her material.
Okay, well, on the bulb sales, we originally had a very bright idea of doing, you'll see the cover, the front page of the website. I originally wanted to put in a montage of the Rotary projects and also to put in a picture of the proposed health center. But the woman who's done the website said it was too complicated, they couldn't do it, there wasn't space, blah, blah, blah. Gave me great uphill for about 2 weeks, and Robert put a lot of time and trouble in getting the photographs together for me and getting them off to her. So eventually I decided that this was the only way that we'd be able to do it. So
Looks
that's
beautiful.
the page of our website. We will forward it, we'll give everybody the link, and we will also forward you a suggested letter that you can use as a covering letter for, asking people to please support us and to go to our website and purchase bulbs. Now, I think we're going to have to be running from the 15th of August supposedly, but I think, let's say from this coming Monday until about the 16th of September. So it gives everybody time to send it out at least once. And unfortunately, they are not prepared to send me a running commentary of who, or a running list of who has ordered. We only get that right at the end. So we're going to have to email people who possibly already purchased. And as you can see, the daffodils, the ones that are deer resistant, have all got a deer resistant sign on them. So all those, I'm not sure, yeah. The only ones that aren't really in this bunch are the tulips that are not deer resistant.
Beautiful.
Not that anything is truly deer resistant on this island, but at least, the daffodils they usually leave alone, and we've got quite a lot of narcissus in there. So it's up to you folks to sell as much as we possibly can. We get 50% of the sales, of which we're proposing 50% of what we get goes to the health center. So in order to make a meaningful donation to the health center, we're going to have to work the system pretty hard. So you'll get all the information on Monday.
Great.
You can
Okay.
Is there-
dive into it. Okay.
Good work,
Will there
Sheila.
be
Questions?
will there be posters to put up?
I
all?
haven't organized posters yet. I will put them up in the next week.
Okay.
The thing is, getting them printed now is not quite as easy as it used to be. because
Right.
we're not having the office.
Yeah.
So,
Someone's
yeah,
going into Staples or somewhere like that in West
that's
Van
right. Yeah,
and probably get them
going
done.
in, and we can get them done there. But I'll try and get that through next week. But we only got this. I only finally got this today or yesterday evening.
Sheila's
So
probably going into town next Monday or Tuesday, so we can probably go and get them printed off.
okay, well, we'll talk about it. Okay.
Sorry about that, guys. My connection just died, and so I had to reconnect again. I don't know what it is, but there we are.
You're
Are
back.
there any other questions about the bulb sales?
When are we starting? Right on Monday, or as soon as
We're
you?
hoping to start on Monday,
Okay. And it'll end when?
15th of September.
Thank you.
We can probably extend that to about the 20th. But if you want to get, because they ship October, and if we close too late, it could happen that they don't have what we've ordered. They don't have enough, depends what other people have sold. So it's better to close fairly early because then we get preferential. And it also means it gives us time to distribute the orders once they get to Bowen.
Right. Thank
if
you.
you go through on the website beyond the actual order, where you hit cart, you'll see that it's ship free to Bowen Island, and then that will come to us and we'll have to sort that out and distribute them, or they give you a list of how much postage or how much shipping is. Depending on how much you buy your shipping, they charge shipping. So that's only to the people who are not being delivered to from Bowen. That's free.
So Sheila, are we sending this out to the garden club?
You're sending it out to everybody you know, Diana. You're sending as many as you possibly can. Now, I don't know, we're obviously going to get up. Some people are going to get from two or three members. I mean, like the garden club, as you know, I'm still in. I don't know that I've got a full list of the garden club. Maybe you have. But certainly all the people that I know of the names that I've still got of people who bought in the past, I will be emailing them. But if you do it as well, it doesn't matter.
Maybe if we
twice.
Okay, maybe if we contact Holly, because she's got the membership, we could. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen a newsletter for ages. Maybe something.
No, well, there hasn't been one for ages. I don't actually think. I would actually not like to involve the garden club too much.
Okay.
Anything, because when we did ask them or tell them that we were doing this, they all sort of seemed to think that we were asking their permission. and
Okay.
which we weren't doing at all. We were being polite and saying we're doing it.
Okay.
But so I'd rather not go to Holly, but that's entirely up to you.
Okay. No, just wondering. Okay.
Thanks. Anybody else?
When I lost my connection, I was going to talk about Bowen. We're running a bit late now because of that, but I just want to tell you, Bowen, could we postpone our Rotary moment to our next meeting and have you do it then? But I just wanted to tell everyone, I was middle of telling everyone that Bowen was with Piers. Pretty much they were both the movers and shakers behind the starting of the Rotary Club of Bowen Island, and he has been on the board ever since. He handed over his foundation directorship to Stephen, and it was so sad not to see him at our first board meeting. So I made a kind of decision to ask him, and he accepted, to be past president emeritus. So, and he is happy to do that. So we'll see him again at our board meetings, and I hope all our other meetings as well, because he's a great member of our club.
Well done, Bon.
Okay, now I'm going to ask Robin to introduce our guest speaker for tonight. And here he is.
I'm going to try and do this as shortly as possible, or as quickly as possible. I'm going to introduce Margaret, my daughter, who has been working in East Africa for about the last 10 or 11 years and been doing sterling work. And we all know of it through the Run for Rwanda and our connection with that as a club. But we thought it would be really useful to let you know that she's moved to Bowen Island, so she's full-time contactable and accountable. And she is going to talk to us tonight about Rwanda and the way that they've dealt with COVID-19, and also her connection with East Africa in general, started by an overview of Chimera. So without much more ado, the woman I'm very proud of, my lovely daughter, Margaret.
Well, isn't that just a lovely introduction? It's so fun to see so many familiar faces. And it is very wonderful to be back on Bowen again. I feel like I've been bumping into people here and there, and it's been great. All the things that you take for granted as a young child and teenager on Bowen all of a sudden make a lot of sense when you return as an adult with children of your own. So it is indeed wonderful to be back, although I do tend to now spend my days on Bowen Island on Zoom calls, which I'm not sure is a great thing, but here we are. This is our world. So I am going to share my screen, and I'm sure a lot of you are spending a significant amount of time on Zoom too. As my dad mentioned, oh, there we go, okay. I think I got the right thing up here. I'm going to just do a little bit of an overview on Komera. Some of you have heard me speak of Komera before, about Komera before, but I figured it would be helpful just to have a bit of an overview. I can give an update on the center. I'll talk a little bit about COVID. It has been obviously front and center for the team in Rwanda over the last couple of months, and for our team in the US and now Canada. Also a little bit about my new work that I'm doing, that I'm moving on to as well. So a little bit of an overview. Rwanda, this is beautiful small country of 11.5 million people. We work in a district of Rwanda in the eastern province here called Kayonza district. The star here marks where our home base is, but our work covers this entire district, which is about 450,000 people. Rwanda is incredibly organized into 30 districts. And within those districts, you have sectors. And within those sectors, you have villages, and they are all organized through local leadership and have a powerful system in order to support and organize the country. Rwanda is run by President Paul Kagame. He is what I like to call a benevolent dictator, which sometimes is good, sometimes is bad. During a global pandemic, turns out it's actually quite a good thing, because he says do this and everyone says okay. But historically, and not under his leadership, obviously Rwanda went through some pretty significant challenges in 1994 with the Rwandan genocide, but since then has rebounded pretty beautifully as a country. And their response to COVID, I would say, really highlights how well they are doing, and some of the work that they're doing now, and investments in public infrastructure are pretty powerful. So Rwanda is a landlocked country surrounded by Uganda, Tanzania, Burundi, and DR Congo. They last year, I think it was, went through a big, no, it was further than, it was longer than last year. They may have had they haven't had any cases, but they've had a few scares with Ebola because of bordering the Congo. And so they have actually been pretty well set up to deal with emergency response in country, and have done a significant amount of investment in health infrastructure. Each district has a hospital, and within each district they have health centers that feed into those hospitals. Then they also have regional hospitals that are specialized hospitals.
Wow.
And please, as I go, feel free to jump in and interrupt me, ask questions. I'm always happy to respond as I go. Whatever your preference is. If you feel more comfortable typing a question in the chat, you can do that too. I'll try and keep track, or I'll ask someone to keep track. So a little bit of my story. I landed in Rwanda actually 13 years ago in 2007, working with the Clinton Foundation, small foundation you might know, heard of, but was thankfully positioned with a great organization called Partners in Health, and worked under an incredible global health doctor called Dr. Paul Farmer. A lot of his work is, he's a prolific writer, but there's also a book about him that's called Mountains Beyond Mountains, written by Tracy Kidder. I highly recommend it. It's a beautiful, beautiful book about Haiti and about global health, and talks a lot about the vision of Partners in Health, how it was started, and their focus on serving the poor and providing healthcare to everyone globally, regardless of where they're based or where they're from. So I landed with Partners in Health, had a little bit of Stockholm syndrome, and my kidnappers became my family, and spent a year and a half working and living in rural Rwanda. And as many of you know, my past was also very focused on running. Running took me to university, gave me a lot of opportunities in my life, helped me, or I traveled the world because of competing on the Canadian national team. And so obviously when I was in Rwanda, I would go running in the villages, and never any girls were participating in sports, and pairing that with, at that time, the girls' education crisis wasn't really forefront. It wasn't an issue that had come into global focus, and I was really seeing it as a huge issue for girls going to school. And then also this idea of how do we engage, or how do we provide opportunity for girls to engage in sport. So in 2008, in partnership with social workers from Partners in Health, we hosted Rwanda's first ever girls only fun run. and sponsored 10 young women to go to school. Actually had zero intention of starting a nonprofit. Just wanted to give back to this incredible community that I had learned so much from. You know, fast forward 13 years later, Komera is a fully fledged organization where we focus on education, community development, and sport. I'll talk a little bit about what we've been able to accomplish. But really the crux of our work, we are not a school. A lot of times people think that we're an educational institution, but we intentionally did not start a school when we began, because we really wanted to work within the public infrastructure and figure out how we could support the systems that were already in place. So scholarships that come through Komera Canada and that are supported by the Rotary Run for Rwanda provide scholarships to girls to go to local public schools that tend to mostly be boarding schools, actually. So we work with a couple of incredible boarding schools that are public that young women go to. We also do a fairly significant community development program, because we believe that you cannot just support a girl. I actually do not believe in that, you know, sort of saying of educate a girl and she's going to lift her family and the world out of poverty. I don't know about you, but if someone said that to me, I would feel slightly overwhelmed. And so it's not really fair that we say that about young poor girls around the world. You know, they deserve the support and the love and the care and the investment that young women receive all around the world. Young women receive here. They deserve healthcare, they deserve economic empowerment, they deserve opportunity. And that's really what we're in the business of doing, is providing them with opportunity, building community around them, supporting parents to start small businesses so that they can send their children to school, their other children to school, I should say, and using sport, continuing to use sport as a tool for development as well. So this next slide is just a little visual that sort of shows the complicated web of support that we provide to young women. We have evolved fairly significantly in our programming over the last couple of years, where I can show you this slide, which is our most recent impact report, where we have, our numbers are at about 2,500 people impacted annually. Currently, we have 84 young women in secondary school. We have 66 young women in university that we support. And we have 25 young women in a post-secondary transition program to support them to go from secondary school to university. We've graduated 141 young women, and we have from secondary school. We have 15 scholars who have graduated from university. This year, we're actually about to graduate our biggest class from university, which I think is going to be about 22 young women, which is an exciting milestone for us. We started 2 years ago a program with the most vulnerable young women in our community, teen mothers. It's a huge issue, and especially with COVID, it's growing. We do a community-based mentorship program. So mentors in communities are trained to work with and coach and mentor teen mothers on how to care for their children, how to start small businesses. They do a lot of reconciliation with families, helping girls re-enter back into their families. A lot of the time they've been kicked out. We do now a pretty significant primary school program where we run a soccer program at 4 different primary schools. We really believe that working with boys in addition to girls is an imperative when you think about gender equality. And we use soccer as a tool to encourage them to play together. When they start the program, the girls are not allowed to play. And the work that we do with them is we kind of trick them into playing together. And then by the end of the program, they're playing soccer together, and the boys are advocating for pads for girls in school for their periods. It's a steep trajectory of learning, but a beautiful one that takes about a year. For primary 5 is grade 5. And that has been a pretty significant program for us. So we have 52 now on our team in Rwanda. We are very focused on Rwandan leadership. 14 full-time, 2 part-time teachers, and 36 support staff. We have a large support staff, and they're sort of like part-time staff. And then we have 84 Komera businesses that I can talk a little bit about that have been pretty powerful actually during this time of COVID. Vision for Komera going forward. We set a strategic plan 3 years ago, and it was a resounding, so we've rented office space in Rinkwabu and kind of have been moved around as an organization pretty significantly. And a couple of years ago, decided that we needed a home, and we needed a home to build our programs out of. And so this is the Komera Leadership Center that is going to be built, hopefully in the next year or 2. And it is a beautiful space that is going to be right in the community. It has been a pretty significant project that we've done in collaboration with multiple stakeholders in terms of what's going to happen there. It's going to be a big health advocacy space for adolescent girls where they can come, they can ask questions. We will provide very light medical sort of treatment, and not medical treatment, but I'm missing the word, exams to help them figure out where they need to go in terms of the support that they need next. We have health facilities around our area. Our role is going to be to advocate for adolescent girls in those health centers too, creating safe spaces, allowing them to get the services that they need, allowing them to access sanitary napkins and pads. It's a huge issue. And also just education about their bodies. A lot of them are missing just basic information on how their bodies work. Sorry, did someone have a question?
Saying
Who thinks you should run for president?
So I have a video too, but maybe I'll share that afterwards about the center that will give you a bit more of a visual about it. But that is our over the next year, hopefully, funding dependent, we will get it off the ground and get it rolling. So this is sort of the next big step for Komera and where we're heading as an organization. It's a pretty exciting one. We're going to be doing multiple different programs, a lot of job creation work for young women. There is a vision for an early childhood development center. There is, it's a meeting space, community space, and it really is for the people who live in this area. And then having it be sort of like a leadership hub where other organizations can come and learn, and where we can run our work out of as well.
What a great model.
Yeah. It's pretty, I mean, this picture is actually very accurate of what it looks like there. Those are the mountains. Rinkwabu, where we're based, is the land of 1,000 rabbits. So moving on to COVID. So in March 2020, Rwanda moved very quickly, actually, in terms of a full country lockdown. They, again, as I said, being a benevolent dictatorship, it was like, you stay home, and if you leave your home, you're going to be in huge trouble. And so people stayed home for better or worse. They were allowed to go out on everyone had a designated market day where they could go get food if they needed food. But if you weren't, I mean, one of our staff members ran out of milk, and she went out on a day that was not her specified market day, and it was not good for her. They have very strict mask wearing protocols. Everyone has to wear a mask at all times. They have an incredible testing and contact tracing program where they are, so about 3 months into their lockdown, they did a randomized test of a variety of different populations. I think they tested, it was like 3,000 people, but across the country. And from that sample came back, it was like 3% of the population was infected. And that gave them the signal that they were ready to open. But it also showed them where there was still some significant outbreaks. And so they have certain districts that are still shut down. You're not allowed to go in and out of those districts, and people have to remain there. They did a very, so if people were infected, they were immediately removed from their homes and put into COVID treatment centers, and their family was placed on quarantine. But they believed pretty deeply in the model of removing sick people from homes, because a lot of homes have multiple families that live in them, and the potential for spread was pretty significant. They have used, they have extensive use of technology, has just been incredible. And, you know, the systems that are already set up for HIV testing and Ebola are there. And so they've just sort of transitioned a lot of those systems over to COVID, which could in fact have an adverse impact on the population too. You know, as is the case globally, there are still a lot of other issues going on. And so it'll be interesting to see what that impact is going to be over the long term. But they've been using robots in these treatment centers. They can screen people for COVID and deliver food and medication. You know, in the airport, they just reopened the airport on August 1st, and they have robots there who are taking screenings, temperature screenings, and they just have really leaned into technology. They do a lot of medical delivery in Rwanda because it's such a small country, with drones. They have, when we were there, actually, my mom was there and saw the drone delivery program where for very remote rural hospitals, in order to receive specific medications, if they've stocked out of different things, they can contact a pharmacy that is at a drone site, and they can load up the medication into the drone, and the drone goes and drops it by parachute to the health center or hospital.
Wow.
So they are pretty well advanced in a number of different ways. But for a population of 11.5 million, they're at about 2,000 cases, which is better than British Columbia.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, I think that their move has been fairly, their very strict protocols have been fairly significant in terms of the impact of the spread. What they're dealing with, and I think the biggest issue is because they're a landlocked country, they still have trucks coming in from other countries for services, goods and services, to try to keep their economy going. And a lot of truck drivers coming in from Tanzania are infected, and you know, they stop along the way and spread. And so that has been part of the issues that they've been trying to contain and deal with as best they can.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's been pretty significant to watch. But that being said, and I'll talk a little bit about Komera's COVID-19 response and what we've seen at the local level, is during fairly the lockdown, when people weren't allowed to leave homes, you know, the typical Rwandan home is not similar to a home here, and the typical, you know, like the average income per Rwandan is $2,000 a year. Where we are, though, it is significantly less. It is probably closer to $500 a year as their household income, and they are very, very dependent. And that's actually being generous. Very dependent on subsistence farming. So day to day, they are going out and they are digging in other people's gardens to either get food from themselves or get money so that they can go out and buy stuff from the market. So when the lockdown happened at first, it was so extreme that these families couldn't go anywhere and they were starving in their homes. And it was really bad. And so we launched, once they started to open up, I think they realized pretty quickly that that was not a good strategy, as the districts started trying to deliver food, but they didn't have enough food for families. They started to lessen the reduce the restriction on village movement and encouraged villages to try and support one another in terms of food equity. So Komera launched a fund where we said, okay, what we're going to do, a lot of people were moving to direct food donation. And what we said was, well, let's just do direct cash transfers and get money into their hands so that they can figure out, what it is, or not that they can figure out, they know what it is that they need. We transferred it nominally to the female head of household because we know that women maybe sometimes can be a little more responsible with that stuff. And we know that women will invest in food and children as well. So we did direct cash transfers, and a lot of people are incredibly vulnerable when it comes to healthcare issues. So we made a move to make sure that all families were on health insurance. That is a thing in Rwanda. So you have to have health insurance in order to go to a health center or to a hospital. And then it's free healthcare. And it's health insurance there is $5 a year. It's not significant for us from our lens, but to a lot of families, that's pretty significant for them as an investment. So we said, okay, well, let's make sure that everyone can get treatment regardless of where they are, or what they have, or what they don't have. So we made a big investment in health insurance. And then another significant issue for a lot of young women in our programming was mental health. They were feeling hopeless, there's no school on the horizon, they're stuck at home often, and unfortunately in not great environments. So we started these programs where they're weekly support groups, mobile phone support groups. And so every family has some form of a telephone, and we made sure that they did. And we made sure that girls were able to get on a phone and be able to connect with the mentors within our programs. They were able to have like a telephone line going back up to the Chimera staff if there was a significant issue. They had small group meetings in their villages if they needed to. But we sort of, because of our network, we were able to create this sort of web of support around adolescent girls, and also teaching them how to support other girls, younger girls in their community, to make sure that they were okay, they were safe, if there were issues, how they could report on issues. I'm just blabbing on here, but I'll keep going. So COVID Rwanda, August 2020, as I said, so it's currently at 2,200 cases, 1,500 recovered, 634 active cases, and 8 deaths. They continue to have very strict mandates around mask wearing and social distancing, so much so that if you are caught with your mask here, which we see with a lot of people, you will be scooped up off the street, you will be taken to a local stadium, and you will be made to sit there all night long listening to people teaching you how to wear a mask properly. And then in the morning you are released and you are told to wear your mask properly. And they are very, very strict about it. So I think something like 70,000 people have gone through government re-education programs.
Wow.
Or if you're not following social distancing protocols either. So don't mess. They are planning to reopen schools in September, but will continue to evaluate. The country is committed to building more school infrastructure with assistance of the population, and they are in process of doing that right now. I'll talk a little bit about that in the next slide. And they do this really interesting model of group testing where they put 50 tests in at once, and they run the tests for COVID, and if it's all negative, then they can move on from them tests. If they get one positive result back from the grouping of tests that they do, they then individually test that bundle. So that enables them to test pretty quickly and pretty significantly bigger numbers. And I can't remember if it's 50 or more, but they have this model, and I'm sure it's here too, but I found that interesting. So again, because Rwanda is this fascinating little country, I mean, you can drive across it in 5 hours, it's tiny. The Ministry of Education has embarked on an ambitious plan to build 22,000 classrooms and 31,000 latrines across Rwanda in order to reduce overcrowding and create a safe and socially distant education experience. This was launched in July. They are hoping to have this completed by September. They have asked the entire country to help and build and get their hands dirty and participate. And everyone is doing that. Socially distanced, of course, wearing masks. And they call it the Rwanda Quality Basic Education for Human Capital Development Project. And it's at 70% for single stories, 72% for latrines countrywide, and 17 out of 30 districts are above 70% in completion. Wow. So there's just like fascinating little pieces of Rwanda like that you look at, and you say, wow, like it's efficient, but there's also massive, other issues.
Where do they get, what is the income of the country? Where do they get their income? Are they mining more oil or?
No, it's actually tourism is a big one. Tea, coffee are the main ones. They have, and I think this is the reason why Rwanda hasn't gone the direction of Congo, is that they really have no natural resources like oil or diamonds or like all the stuff that creates conflict. So they've been a little bit unscathed in that sense. But yeah, they have emerged as sort of this boutique tourist destination over the last couple of years. So much so that it's like it's hard to get hotels in the north by the gorillas anymore under $500 a night.
Wow. Okay, thanks.
Of course, the money was poured into the country after the genocide, and there's been a huge amount of capital from many countries, including the United States, to help out and create Kigali, the capital, is an amazing modern city. It just blows your mind when you think you're going to darkest Africa, and there you are in a city that is, actually it's a quaint mixture of African and North American with huge new buildings and hotels.
I was amazed at how clean it was.
Has the same person been in power since the Rwanda?
Yeah.
Okay.
He changed the constitution so he could stay in power longer too. There are problems with benevolent dictatorship, and every Rwandan will swear up and down allegiance to the government, because if they don't, that's a problem. You get thrown in jail. There's not a lot of freedom of press. There's not political opponents are not accepted or embraced.
And has he got a successor marked?
No.
Okay,
no.
Thank you.
So we'll see. It's such a fascinating story, and it's he gets a lot of criticism, and rightly so in certain circumstances. But at the same time, it's also like, well, maybe that's, you know, what this country needed, is they needed a really strong leader to come in after the genocide and be, you know, draw a very strong line and say, don't step over that line. And, you know,
well, there were very strong people outside the country who wanted to push him out and return it to the genocidal situation. And he stood firm on that. And I mean, basically, if anyone tries to come in from that kind of thinking, he does them in, which is fair enough.
All is normal. Okay, thanks. I just wondered.
Yeah. So I recognize I'm running up on time here. Mom, you'll cut me off when I need to exit. But I'm doing okay so far? Okay. I'll just give one...
Margaret, before you move on from Komera to Amplify, could you just spend a little time talking about the small businesses that have been created in the Komera community?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I was going to touch on that. I forgot. So when we started, Komera, was essential. We realized to include parents. We couldn't just talk to girls in a home and not include parents in the conversation. And it was an imperative to talk about women and girls' rights within the community. And one of the things that we did a significant amount of work on was small business development. And so we created the Komera Guardian Cooperative. They started small savings groups. And initially, when they first started, Komera matched their savings and helped grow their sort of fund. The Guardian Cooperative then registered themselves as a business, and a cooperative is multiple businesses under one umbrella. And they started a loan and repayment program with sort of a governing board who helped support the businesses. And the governing board managed all of the smaller businesses within a variety of different communities. And they were sort of it was like a trickle down model of they received training and then they went out and supported and shared that training with the smaller businesses on like business development, marketing, you know, how do you build a business? How do you save money? What does that look like? And then during COVID, everything shut down. We said, okay, we had to completely shut down programming just to try and protect and to shift funding to support COVID, but also to make sure that Komera was going to be okay. And one of the programs that we said, okay, we cannot fund, or we're not going to, and at that point we weren't matching any business dollars. They were running this sort of loan and repayment program on their own, and it just kept on working beautifully on its own because we had sort of slowly backed out from it, but also, you know, it was their business and they were running it. And it was sort of a little bit of a silver lining of this work of saying, okay, this business development, this program is actually not dependent on Komera. They fully own it. They fully see the power of it, and it has functioned very well on its own. And so that'll be the model going forward, is that they will have their own self-standing mini bank and loan and repayment program that they run, that the parents run for themselves. And so that's where we have 84 different businesses where they are now, you know, able to send other kids to school and invest in their homes and do some pretty incredible work.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I should also say that when Margaret talks about we, she is talking about mainly this group of people in Rwanda, all Rwandans, who run this organization. And they're an amazing crowd of mainly women, young women, who manage the whole thing. And Margaret is sort of the person, the founder, and does lots of fundraising and the inspiration. But these women back there who work in rented offices and have to move from one, as Margaret said, from one location to another, they run this amazing organization, and that's what Margaret and all the board in the States feel, and we too, that it is the people themselves who need to run the organization, not us telling them what to do. Rather, they are making decisions and are doing an amazing job.
Mm-hmm. Does the government there acknowledge what you guys are doing for their country?
Mm-hmm. Actually, the land that we have the center on was given to us by the government.
That's amazing. Good.
Yeah. So
Good.
They've been very supportive of our work, which has been great.
Yeah.
Margaret,
And
could you spend a few minutes just talking about how funds are raised?
yeah, absolutely. So we have a team in the US, and we have a pretty, well, it was fairly diversified until recently. Our event-based fundraising strategy has taken a significant hit this year. But we do have a pretty diverse funding stream. We have foundation support, we have individual support, we have corporate support, and I would say the majority of our funds, about half of our funds, come from individuals, and then the other half is sort of a mixture of corporate and foundation. Komera's budget, so it's a little funny with Amplify, this new project that I'm working on this year. So this was our first year where Chimera specifically raised, I think it was $550,000. And with Amplify and the work that we do with Amplify, we raised over $1 million this year. So it's a sizable operation now. But we have 2 staff members in the US who do most of that. And then our leadership team in Rwanda does a significant amount of fundraising now too. And that model, I should say, just what my mother was talking about, you'll hear it here first, is actually, I will be stepping down as executive director of Komera, because I believe so deeply that our executive director position should be held in Rwanda. And so Dativa, who has been the leader there for 5 years, will be the executive director. I will be senior advisor, working on the center, supporting them to get that built and finished. And we'll have a managing director in the US, and my role will be diminished, because I really do believe that leadership should be in the country where the programs and work is based. So I will continue to be their biggest advocate and supporter and cheerleader, and will do anything and everything for the organization. But I really believe that an organization can show its success by founders moving on, and it continuing to be able to thrive. So yeah, September 1st will be my end date, my official step down date. But I really, I think that the system needs to change a little bit in terms of leadership models. And again, at Komera, we're trying to lead by example too.
So cool.
So, but I will still be within the system of Komera, because I'm really interested in systems work. And so, in all of my spare time, I started another organization out of Komera called Amplify, really based off of, elevating the role of community-driven development and community-based organizations. And I can say this about Eastern Africa, but I would stress that this is actually something that globally needs to happen, is that we need to really start listening to communities and listening to what they know to be true and the way in which that they want to solve problems. And so with Amplify, we started it 2.5 years ago, and we said, okay, how do we collectively work together as organizations and stop working in our individual silos? And so I've been working on this idea of how we create scale by bringing organizations together to move specific issues forward across countries, across regions. So basically, I am now working with 18 organizations like Komera, but it has been pretty phenomenal because I've had an opportunity to learn, across the region, and learn from incredible leaders across the region. And so how do we shift this model of like top-down development, telling people what needs to happen, bringing in expensive consultants to say, okay, like, this is how you need to run your program. And instead say, like, let's listen to the people who know and understand and elevate their issues and support them where they need the support. So that is Amplify. Komera is part of Amplify, so I will continue to support Komera. And with that, I can talk a little bit about Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania and their COVID responses. It's been varied. It's been crushing across these countries too. For Kenya, their schools closed in March and they're not opening until January. They have 28,000 cases, 15,000 recovered, 600 deaths, but their numbers are shooting up pretty significantly. Uganda still has a very heavy curfew. Those numbers, I don't believe. They have, their schools are closed. They went through an intensive lockdown as well. Museveni, their president, has an election next year, and he too started out as a benevolent dictator, but now is just a horrific person, and is using COVID to actually go out and take out people, his adversaries, unfortunately, and it's been pretty challenging to watch. And in Tanzania, they decided that COVID is just not a thing that they are going to really worry about. So they have not monitored COVID at all. They have no data. They have done no testing. Schools have reopened. I talked to one of our partners there recently, and they said, well, there's a lot of pneumonia. So, well, yeah, that tends to happen with this issue. But so across the board, we've seen, just heartbreaking teen pregnancy, heartbreaking, and I think this is a global problem. Teen marriage, starvation, loss of business, domestic abuse is just really brutal. We have a partner who works in northern Kenya, and she was treating a girl who was 9 who was pregnant, and she just said, it's so, and I kept on saying, well, what is it? Like, what are the issues? How can we figure this out? And she's like, it's so multi-layered. There's not a direct solution to this. But, getting back into school is really important because it fills their time at a minimum. And so it has been fascinating to see how a lot of these community-based organizations are able to respond, though, in really powerful ways because they work in these communities and understand what they can do and what they can't do and how they can move money to get food out to people, to get masks out to people, to get girls into safe houses, to make sure that police are trying to supporting them to try to do their jobs. And so we were able, as Amplify, to raise $100,000 to support COVID response for these 18 organizations that we're working with, which has been significantly helpful for a lot of them.
Wow.
But it is, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. But the benefit for a lot of these countries, though, besides the cities and the slums in the cities, is that there's so much space. People are, in northern Kenya, they're spread out, so the spread isn't as quick, is what they're finding too in more remote areas, which is same for here, right? So that is all I have for you this evening.
Amazing.
I'm happy to ask, what's the web address for Amplify? I can put it in here. Any other questions?
No, I think it's amazing.
Me too.
Margaret, to
I'm
know
really,
I really do, Margaret. Coming from
thank you.
Africa and having had a little bit of experience with trying to be of assistance, I can't tell you how much I value with Komera generally. I think it's absolutely amazing. And thank you so much for coming to talk to us. I was only going to stay for what I had to say, and then I was going. So I'm now leaving. Thank you very much. You kept me spellbound. Thank
Well,
you.
that's good. I'm glad. I'm honored, Sheila.
Thank you. It was really fantastic. Thank you.
Of course, of course.
Bye, everybody. See you.
Sheila.
Yeah.
Bye.
Well, Komera definitely, as an organization, really supports, and I know this year things are a little different with the Rotary run, but you know, every dollar goes a long way. I was talking to someone who we were hiring recently, because we're hiring a new person in the U.S., and said, you know, the thing that I'm most proud of at Komera is that we can honestly, every single, you know, since day one when we started the organization, I said it was an imperative that we knew and could stand by every single dollar that we raised and know that it was going to quality services to girls. We could have very easily have said, okay, we're going to get as many girls into school as possible, and we're going to pat ourselves on the back and feel great about it. And what we decided very early on was that that wasn't what this was about. It was about deep transformational care for young women. And that's, you know, what we've been able to do and build as an organization. So your support has gone a really long way, and we appreciate that so much. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really neat.
We started raising about $5,000 a year, and now we seem to be up to about $25,000 a year. So
Fantastic.
So we have 12 girls at school and 3 in university, and having gone there myself and met these girls and talked to the staff, it made such a huge difference to actually see how it works, and you know, the good that is being done by this organization. And
everyone who goes there feels that. I mean, you know, it's just an amazing experience to go there.
And it's a beautiful country.
Yeah, we will definitely, when we can open this center, we will welcome everyone for the biggest party possible. So if you're into going to Rwanda one day, I'll let you know, and it'll be one for the books, I think. Everyone will be ready to have a celebration at that point. Just a quick hop over to Rwanda.
I think Kathy's got a hand up. Oh no, that's just a thumbs up. Sorry.
Come hang out in Rwanda. Great.
I do have a question, and it's relating to the fundraising that you're doing through Amplify.
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to be more effective with every dollar through Amplify? Like, are you leveraging and all of that? Or should we be contributing to Chimera or to Amplify?
Oh, that's a good question. No, I will not steal you from Chimera for Amplify. Amplify, it's fascinating. So, you know, Chimera was a slow growth organization, and you know, over 10 years we grew to about $500,000. In the last year and a half at Amplify, we've grown to $500,000 because we've been able to leverage that idea of collective scale, right? Like a roll-up basically of organizations, and say, you know, your reach is going to be so much greater with 25 organizations. But a lot of the work that we've done and continue to do is with large foundations. So, you know, we will be able to go work with the Gates and the, you know, like the larger foundations with this significant reach. And because we're doing significant research as well, we're pairing our work with how do we involve communities and leaders in developing research protocols and developing research that's relevant to communities and, you know, in their languages and helpful to them. And that type of research is really new. too. So our goal is, because so many of these organizations are like Komera, are still fundraising from individuals and smaller foundations. And as Amplify, we don't want to be in the same pot as them. We want to be accessing those larger dollars that these small organizations will never have an opportunity to access. And our job is to make sure that they actually get a piece of that pie too.
So then does the donor, the larger foundation or the donor, then determine which charity it redirects to? Or you said you have 18 partners now. Do you make the decision, or, you know?
No, the partners do, actually. We've had a lot of discussions around this, and the partner sizes vary from very small to, you know, Komera size, if not a few larger ones too. And we've had some pretty interesting discussions around, you know, how do you split money up? Do you split it based on the size of the organization? Do you split it, you know, based on the income for the year or impact? How does it get split? And this is the model that we follow, is like, how do we create or develop decision-making processes together? And they decided that they were going to focus on an equity model where everyone got exactly the same amount of money. Didn't matter how big or how small, and that sometimes the small organizations need that injection of money more than the bigger organizations. And in fact, with the COVID fund, we've been giving disbursements out as money came in. Like, it comes in the door, it goes out. And in one of the disbursements, you know, we have some organizations that are in deep, deep crisis, and we said to the collective, okay, if you don't need this, don't take it. Like that was our model. And we had 5 organizations who said, nope, give it to the others. We think that we are okay right now. Give it to the other organizations, split it between them. We will be okay. And that was just like, okay, the kids are all right.
Sweet. It's working.
Yeah, well, it's just it's a new way of thinking about how we can collaborate instead of compete, right, with one another. And I really believe that it can and should be a model that we can use globally.
Yeah. How alone are you in this thinking, Margaret?
I think we're at the forefront of it, but I think that there is a shift happening in terms of
which means that you're a global leader at the moment.
I think so.
Well, I mean, I think movements are people are starting to understand the importance of movements and the importance of advocacy and the importance of like things that are not as tangible as we want them to be. And this idea of, you know, how do we actually work together rather than compete
collectively?
Yeah, to move issues forward. It's something that we've moved far away from, and we have to sort of recenter ourselves and think about how does that model work?
Yeah, or not work.
Or not work. Yeah, very possible. And you know, my job is like, I call myself the cat herder or fire tender. You know, like I gotta move all the different pieces around and talk to all the different, like, yeah, I'm a politician basically. But we're able to move a lot, you know, and the force of 18 organizations, and we're growing to more organizations. It's not an exclusive club. I think is going to be pretty powerful to be able to advocate on certain issues, you know, when it comes to getting girls back into school, when it comes to changing government policies around, you know, girl-specific latrines in schools, or, you know, I think that there's a lot possible.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me tonight. It's nice to
good
meet
news
you.
is with 18 other charities to work from, we'll see you 18 more times.
Actually, she may join Rotary soon.
Really?
That's news. Thanks so much, Margaret.
Thank you.
And we learned quite a lot as well, even though we talked to you a lot about it. It's every time you talk to the public, we learn more things. So that's great. Well, just I want to wrap up quickly after that to say that the Rotary Run for Rwanda is going ahead virtually, and we actually have an ad in the Undercurrent next week, and we have hopefully all of you are receiving the emails from Komera. The problem is they tend to go into the in Gmail anyway. They go into your social or promotions things. They don't come up unless you actually look for them. But we are sending out MailChimp stuff, and hopefully Susan Monroe will be doing some Facebook stuff for us. And we have had some very nice donations from from some corporations, from some individuals, which is really nice. So it looks like we will not be short on our funds for supporting our girls this coming year, which is great.
Wonderful.
Other things, yes, our district governor, Dave Hamilton, was set to come over on August the 27th, but I actually put him off because our past president and our treasurer and several of our members have indicated that that's not a good date for them. So Dave is going to come on the September the 10th. And he actually is more interested in a Zoom meeting than he is in a social gathering. I might have told you that he has some significant issues, medical issues, so probably he's being fairly careful. So it will be a Zoom meeting on September the 10th. Because we're all going to be so working so hard on selling bulbs and signing people up for Rotary Run for Rwanda, we may not have a meeting on August the 27th. I am happy to organize a meeting if someone has a speaker who they think could come by on August the 27th. Always open for it. For the moment, I haven't come up with anyone. So we'll be in touch about that. In the meantime, yeah, the COVID cases are rebounding significantly in BC, not amongst our community, we hope, we don't think. So let's all keep safe and keep within our bubbles as much as possible and wear our masks when we go into the pharmacy, right, Catherine, and the general store and Artisan Eats and the Snug and all those places where it's important that we behave ourselves. Anyone got anything to add before we close the meeting? Apart from saying so nice to see Joe and Diana here and Amanda. And,
yeah, thank you, Damien and Alla, for calling in from the sticks.
Well, in actual fact, I'm sitting in the kitchen. I got home last night. So, and I'm sorry that it was not in a position to offer our place for the 27th. But we'll be on the road heading towards Kingston with Anna.
With Anna and beds and chairs and sheets and blankets and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So, but listen, one of the things that I wanted to bring up while I was up at Cortez, I contacted one of the local fishermen up there who was selling seafood through the local markets up there. And I actually contacted I actually called him, and he was actually out on his boat in Queen Charlotte's, Haida Gwaii area, catching fish at the time, actually. Anyway, he's very interested and happy to, I told him that I'd like to buy seafood off him directly in an effort to do some fundraising. And he was quite happy to do it. And so as an example, I think that we could buy 1 pound 1 pound things of spot prawns with the heads off and shell on in one of those plastic things with the frozen in seawater, so they don't get any freezer burn. But I think we could buy those off him for nearly $12 or $13 a piece, which is actually very, very good pricing, I think. And he also had halibut and lingcod salmon. This is not to distract from the thing that Hillary was talking about with the smoked salmon for potentially at Christmas time, but this could be a regular gig. And I'd like to talk to him further about that in an effort to get it to Bowen, to sell it to locals, and any sort of profits we made on it. I really would like to get that as a personal project, and I'll fill in the appropriate documentation for Hillary, because I know that I'll be in trouble if I'm not. For an idea for a fundraiser, but I'd like to use that money to raise money towards putting in a water fountain down at the ferry terminal for people waiting around for the ferry, with for people to fill up their water bottles and to have a drink, and for a kid to have a drink while they're waiting for the ferry in the summertime, especially. And anyway, I've talked about that before, and I think that's something that's a personal project I'd like to do and see. And anyway, I think it could be a longer term facility for us to raise a few funds for projects on Bowen. And I wanted to fill you in that I did talk to the guy. I think he's a guy in his middle 30s. He's got a boat. He's a hard-working fisherman. He was literally out on the ocean when I was talking to him, and he thought it was a great idea. So I just wanted to fill you in that that we might be able to get that going.
That's great.
How will you keep it frozen?
I won't, Lynn. We'll just have to sell it really quickly. No, I mean, that's one advantage of being sort of from my previous work in the produce game. I'm sort of very up to date with the local transport people who keep things in the cold chain, right? So that's not an issue. I mean, getting stuff back to Bowen in a cold chain or frozen chain sense won't be a problem. Okay. So, I mean, it could be, it could be as simple as, I mean, honestly, a chest, just even a simple large chest freezer could probably hold like 300 of those 1 pound tubs of prawns, as an example. So it's not it's really not and then if you could even set it up so say the stuff's turning up on Friday the 5th, and be ready to get it. That sort of thing. But anyway, that's down the track. I just wanted to give you a heads up that I was talking to him, and I'm going to continue to talk to him and set something up which makes sense. And then I'm going to fill in my paperwork for the president.
For the project director, who is...
The project director, my apologies. And then I'd love to see something like that down in the Cove with the Rotary badge.
Sounds terrific.
Yeah.
We're all into eating fish around here.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Because my freezer wouldn't hold more than a couple, so it's like, yeah.
Costco's your friend, Lynn. Costco's your friend. Just go and buy a big freezer.
Thanks so much.
So Hillary, so I suppose, do we have a location yet for the social then?
We don't.
Mm-hmm.
Are you offering?
Well, unfortunately, as I mentioned in my email earlier to you, we may still be up at Desolation Sound.
Oh, you mean on the 27th?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it would be nice to have a social event, but as Robert mentioned, with our place, you have to kind of all stream in one particular area, and many people don't want to do that. They want to be spread around. So yeah, let's think about it. If anyone thinks that they can do that, it would be nice to have some kind of social gathering this month, especially if the weather's good.
Yeah. Hillary, I won't be around, but I was wondering if the Crippen Park would be available. It doesn't seem like it's being used that much, to be honest, currently, especially midweek.
That's true. One could check with Metro Parks.
Yep.
I would have been very happy to offer our garden, but we're going to be in Tofino. So obviously the end of August is a time when everyone's going away.
My thought is that there's so many people away, it'll be scarcely a social gathering. It'll be the scarecrows left on the tree. So why don't we just call it an off night and enjoy family night?
A night off, yeah. Good idea, Robin.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Well, if anyone does think that they would like to do it, let us know, and we'll have a minor rather than a major event. I know we have our entire family with us at that time.
So I won't be there. I won't be attending anyway because
you'll be looking after the grandchildren. I know.
Yeah. I'm Father Longtooth. I'm patience itself.
Anyway, people, thank you so much for coming. Brenda, great to see you there. You've been very silent this evening, but I know Margaret is looking forward to talking to you about your work with what you do and community involvement and all the rest. So should be interesting. So thank you very much. Keep safe, keep healthy, keep calm, and enjoy Desolations. Oh, are you going back, Damien?
No, heading off. But yes, we're heading up to Princess Louisa Inlet to celebrate Brenda's birthday with the four of us. And then come back, and then a few days later I head off with Anna to the east.
Oh, okay.
Oh, fabulous.
Lisa. Well, Ella and Amanda, have a great time in Desolation Sound. We know it well and would have loved to be there again.
Yeah.
There we are.
We will one day. We'll find somebody with a big motorboat that'll put us up in comfort and run us up.
Let's talk, Robin.
Yes. So your boat is still up there, is it?
Yeah, it's in Egmont right now.
Oh, in Egmont. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for coming. It's been great. We had 20 people here.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. And
Thank you very much.
Good night.
And welcome to Joan and Diane.